two files on that drive. One of them ended in
NK, I saw your note.
That's the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead. The power went out this morning actually for
Yeah.
30 seconds. No, it's cold. It was great. We just got this all set up and the power went out. We're like scrambling. I was weird.
Why isn't City Hall on power? On battery power?
I don't know, there may be the police department.
Yeah. I think they should be, I mean, in an emergency, you need City Hall.
Well, somebody has to bring it up. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Carl. Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
You loving Chipper?
You guys, you guys got some
You loving Chipper?
Good.
Good guy, Sheriff. Four other people?
Yeah, 4 other people.
In this town?
Heard of it?
If you want,
not going to survive or somebody's going to work.
Yes, you're right.
Parker said the same thing. He said, what are we doing? Just holding up the state. Yeah. I should have chimed in. Let him get support even more. Sure. His styles. But he's right about that.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everybody. The stalwarts. It's been a long time no see, right? How many? It's like a couple hours.
What happened to our lives?
I know. I really admire it. I really do. I appreciate it, and I want to thank everybody, all us unpaid, stalwarts. I appreciate it so much for your involvement. We're going to call the meeting to order. It says roll call, but I can see that everybody's here, so I don't have to do that. There is a public comment period right now on non-agenda items. Does anyone have anything to say about something that's not on the agenda? It could also include observations from last night as a prompt.
I can't speak more than once, can I? I can't get.
My husband put my backpack, my pen. Do you need the pen? Where? Oh, it's on my chair. Sorry. Nobody? Come on up.
Can I speak once?
Yeah, I mean, if you could come to the mic, would be great.
I'm Neil Cruz, and again, repeating, we like where you guys are going. Really glad for the moves that you have made, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate also your openness to. The housing issue seems to be a really big deal coming in on the design tradition stuff. The state is not done. They're going to keep going until we stop them. And I think there should be a very concerted effort on the part of Carmel to join with the other cities that are fighting SB 9 and get the heat up on the state, or there's nothing, they're not going to stop with SB 9. So they're taking away the zoning from you guys and they're taking it to the state. That's where this is headed. They're removing local control and they're making it state control. And at least on some measure, I hope that the city of Carmel would take a stand on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Anyone else on housing or any other topic from last night? Anyone have a spare pen? This one's broken, the one I brought. Thank
There you go, pass that one down.
you. Okay. Also, I see, the computer's flipped out, but,
That's me.
oh, I was wondering if we could hear from anyone who's on Zoom. Is anyone, but now I don't see it anymore.
Go put it back up in a second. I just
Okay.
had to get my screen because I'm trying to pull my email up at the same time to get some attachments. for
Okay, so
today.
I don't know if I'm seeing everybody. I see 4 names. Does anyone from the 4 that I see want to chime in, public comment, non-agenda items? I see Nori's name, and maybe Dave, did you have a comment, or are you just videoing?
I'd like to agree with Neil about, we've been talking a lot in this forum about design styles, and I feel that with all the rules coming from California, they're going to overbuild the town and override our local ordinances. It won't really matter what style things are built in. Once we overbuild the town, we've overbuilt the town.
Okay, thank you. It is obviously a matter of grave concern. And Nori is with us, I assume. I don't know if Nori has any. I mean, let's move on to announcements, sorry. And then I thought we'd get announcements from Nori, from the staff, and around the table. Brandon, do you have any announcements? Do you want to start?
I did want to just let the steering committee know that you have some additional materials on the dais for you today. Some of those were provided by the Carmel Preservation Association, and we will obviously we'll address those when they come to do the presentation. But it was 3 items in total. It is this 1-pager right here. It's a printed version of their PowerPoint, and I'm sorry, there's 4 actually. There's Carmel Preservation Summary of Design Guideline Points and Acceptable Roof Styles. So 4 documents in total. You also should have had the agenda, and we're working on printing the outline for the design traditions update, but I think you all have that. So with that, that's all I have for you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Nori, any announcements?
No announcements other than that. I can only be on here for about 20 minutes. And so keep that in mind if you wanted me to give that overview of the outline. Otherwise, I've given some notes to Brandon that he could do it instead if you don't get to it before I have to leave.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very helpful. All right, let's go around the room real quick about from the dais. Anyone have anything to comment about in general or about last night? Everyone was in attendance except Melanie, so it might be helpful to fill her in a little bit here in public and the public who might be listening in. Thoughts? Okay, Marianne, I see.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to have.
I'm not sure it's on.
Is it on? Okay.
Okay.
I think it would be useful to just recap to make sure that we all understood the direction of the council, you know, in the same manner, because I think we were all, that was the ask that we had, that we got, that we also listened to what the intent was for our committee. And I got specific how I read it, and I don't know if you want to comment how you read it. But I felt that the council was pretty clear that it was not set up the way I think, Victoria, you had initially envisioned a committee or a legislative body, as you called it, to function. But I think it was very direct yesterday that they set us up as almost like an expert panel to advise staff and Nori Winter, or to assist staff and Nori Winter, and not the other way around, and for us to report directly to the city council. That's what I got out of their discussion. So I wanted to sort of put a finish line to that particular discussion, if possible.
Okay, anyone else have any thoughts on that one? No comments at all? Well, the only thing I can say to that is that Doug and I did draft that charter, which was not rejected by the city. In fact, I found it a very somewhat chaotic meeting. So I don't know. I'm very pleased to see that we got a landscape ordinance. That was, to me, a major victory. I wasn't that clear, as you seem to be, about any direction, except that the charter was not disputed or voted on it one way or the other, which was odd to me.
Yeah, but isn't that charter a little bit in conflict with what they said last night?
I honestly, I'm a little bit at a loss personally. I accept that we had 3 asks, and that one of them was enthusiastically embraced.
Which one was that?
The landscape ordinance.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, the answer, if you're asking my opinion, is I don't really know. But I don't know how other folks interpreted it.
Madam Chair, I'm not going to speak to the committee members' interpretations, but I may offer that if we're going to have an actual conversation about the outcome of the council meeting, you may want to put that as an agenda item in the future, because I think there might be people that would want to participate in that conversation.
I think that's a good point. And also, again, it's just an announcement period here. So I don't know if any other people have announcements that have to do with either the meeting last night or anything else. Well, since we were talking about paperwork, I have an announcement. There's 3 pieces of paper on your dais that are just the action items from our last 2 steering committee meetings, and the a possible worksheet that we can look at when it comes to organizing our discussion later today. And I wanted to, of course, as a normal announcement, remind everyone of the website repository that we have of documents, and to thank the CPA for helping. They had spent a lot of time putting together a searchable version of the design guidelines, both commercial and residential, which we haven't had for 20 years. So that was very kind of them to supply that to that web page as well, which is just, again, the same public document that we all have access to, but just in a different format. Okay, so now we are on to what we could do here is, because of what Nori's comment was, go ahead and receive his, this is a flipping of the agenda, but I hate to go to 4 when he is pressed for time. Are folks open to moving 5 up so he can weigh in? Yes. Do I see a yes around? Okay, great. Nori, thank you for warning us.
Thanks, and I do sound froggy. I'm still recovering from the virus that's been going around, so that may abbreviate my comments without my control here necessarily. But you had asked if I could give an overview of some of the highlights of the outline that we're working with for the residential design guidelines. And I will be getting you the commercial one soon. There is, of course, a high-level outline for the commercial guidelines in the strategy paper. And we're fleshing that out with more detail at the moment. But in terms of a preview of its organization, that was established in the strategy paper, since, of course, the downtown guidelines didn't have much structure and didn't have much detail. We went ahead and had inserted a high-level outline in the strategy paper. The outline for the residential guidelines builds on the existing documents. That was always the intent, sliding in new material as necessary, and then editing existing guidelines as necessarily. Particularly, again, as the strategy paper points out, and as you all have commented throughout the meetings, to add extra strength and emphasis for some of the guidelines. And so, for example, in many cases, should is changing to shall, or at least in some other form, added emphasis is being provided for existing guidelines, either by adding more detail of what's appropriate or inappropriate, and of course by adding in more photographs. We in the strategy paper showed mock-ups of a couple of examples of how that will happen. In some cases there will be an entire page with a grid of photographs that shows a range of examples, rather than in the current guidelines. In many cases there may only be one image to illustrate a guideline. And you've asked that there be more positive examples, a range provided where it's appropriate, and then also some negative examples. So that's a sort of overall objective in the outline. The document is organized into basically 4 sections. The first one is all introductory material. And I would say about half of that is existing material, some of which is to be edited, some deleted because it's out of date. For example, the current concept phase residential guidelines have diagrams and text describing different review tracks. And those have certainly changed and are likely to change again. And those are being cut back to a briefer description, an overview of process, with the expectation that there will be a separate, more detailed description of the different tracks and thresholds for review. The new pieces for section 1 to point out to you is one called Using This Document. And that gets into a little bit more detail about how people are to use it, from the public and the property owners and their professional consultants, as well as the staff and the city's boards and commissions. And it also has a section explaining some of the key terms. And this is something that you asked for early on. And that is, a definition of that shall means shall, and should means it's expected that you comply. But in any case, there are some of the key terms that have to do with compliance are being added there. The other section that is new follows that, and that is the relationship to other policies and regulations. And staff are helping to develop that. That's giving an update, a discussion of how this does relate to the general plan and other city documents, such as the climate change documents, et cetera. So that's some of the new material that's being added into section 1. The The other key part then is again something that you've asked for and that the community asked for, and that is this discussion of the key characteristics that are valued. And of course, that was a topic of discussion in the earlier workshop. And at present in the outline is the text as it appeared in that initial workshop. We have a lot of feedback from the workshop, and I know you'll want to be working on editing some of those as well. But the intent is to now have that embedded in the document itself. Also being added on, and if you're following, I should have been referencing page numbers. I believe if your printout is the same as mine, it would be page 7. A discussion about what does context mean and how is that used in considering appropriateness. And again, that's something that you've asked for. Following that is a discussion of the history of development, a brief one now, because of course there are much more extensive histories, particularly in the historic context statement that the city has, and this material is drawn from that, but cut down. And that is to explain the sort of the evolution of annexation and the traditional development patterns that have occurred in the city, so that people get an understanding of why there may be some slight variations in some of the neighborhoods from others, and also just the idea of how evolution and change has occurred over time. That then is supplemented with a sampling of Carmel styles, and that it will be brief, but the intent is again to introduce the range of designs that have occurred over the years and to highlight what some of the key characteristics are of each of those styles, so that people can appreciate them, and if indeed they want to design in a way that is referencing one of the earlier styles, that they would have some information on how to do that with some authenticity. So that series, that section helps to set up that understanding of the history and the range of diversity that exists in the city. Section 2, which begins on my page 9, is what is now the separate book of concept level design guidelines. But what we've done there is inserted the guiding principles. And again, this set that's in the outline is the version from the workshop, and we will be editing that with some of the comments from the workshop findings, and certainly we'll be looking to your edits as well. But the intent here is, rather than having that in the introduction, which could run the risk of being overlooked or not taken as regulatory material, we're inserting it into the concept phase guidelines as the first section, so that it's very clear that meeting those guiding principles is expected. Following that then is the current sequence of subcategories for the guidelines: the neighborhood-wide level and site design level, etc. And so for a lot of this, as I mentioned earlier, the changes are adding emphasis, in some cases adding some supplemental text, and in particular adding more contemporary photographs. But by and large, the guidelines themselves, at least the underlying ideas behind them, are the same as are in the current document. There are some areas that I might just, I've tried to in the commentary in the outline indicate where there's something new coming, or that we're basically editing the existing guidelines, but a couple of them maybe to draw attention to are on my page 13. One is about garage encroachment. While there is a little bit of a discussion about that in the current guidelines, we certainly heard from you and the community that more specific criteria for when encroachment is appropriate should be provided. And so we're expanding that discussion. And following that similarly is the discussion about the progression of spaces. And while that is in the existing guidelines, we certainly heard a lot more about this in the workshops. And so we're expanding that both in terms of text and in terms of examples of that layering effect of the foreground for the architecture. And there are others that are being expanded. One, an area that you had identified was what is here, Section 7, privacy, views, light, and air. Again, that is already in the guidelines, but we're expanding the text and adding more visual examples there. And then I'm just looking to see if there's anything else in that section to highlight. When getting into building design, more illustrations and discussion about mass and scale and proportion of buildings. We certainly have learned a lot from the workshop and the handbook analyses of the different examples that people commented on. And some of that is in a summary of the workshop observations that we've already written up and have given to Brandon. I'm not sure if that's been distributed to you yet, but we also are digging down into a lot of the individual comments, but learning a lot about when the different variations of mass and scale and materials interface and window ratios, et cetera, how they interface in terms of people feeling buildings fit in appropriately. So we're adding more of that discussion there. Then section 3 is the existing document of the final design detail level. And again, primarily here, it's adding more examples and in some cases, more emphasis on text. And we are adding in, you'll notice, some references to some of the forthcoming regulations such as ADUs, and that'll have to be ironed out, of course, but that is being addressed here in this final design section for building design and for garages. And then the last section of that is the final phase, landscape design. And again, more illustrations primarily are being added there. A lot of the emphasis about that filtering and layering in the foreground is in the concept level, but we'll be looking at the interplay here to see if there's additional detail that needs to be added in this section as well. The fourth section is really a placeholder, and we need to discuss, we'll want to discuss that with you at a later stage, and that is to what extent should there actually be appendices or not, or just references to other documents rather than embedding them in the actual publication. These days, it's less beneficial to just insert appendices, particularly of other information, rather than just to provide links to it. But that's something I think as the rest of the document evolves, we'll get a better understanding, and we can talk that over with you in terms of if something needs to go there, if a glossary is useful at all, or if it's better just to embed definitions throughout the document as those terms are appearing. So anyway, that's a placeholder for potential supplemental material. So that's the overview of the outline, and as you review it, I hope that'll help you understand where we're trying to go with it.
Extremely helpful. Thank you so much, Nori. And I'm just doing a time check. You said 20 minutes. How many minutes do we have before we lose you?
About 2.
Okay, so then I'm going to very quickly ask the group here if they have any quick follow-up questions for you before we lose you. Mary Ann's leaning forward.
Yeah, Norian, you may want to come back to us with that, but I am interested in, so what I heard yesterday, and please correct me if that's wrong, that the council would, I thought directed us that they want to write a housing ordinance, but that they prefer to have you finish this project first, 1.5, and then they would revise it again or have an appendix, I don't know how that's being handled, for the new housing ordinance. How would you go about doing that? Incorporating that, or would you then go ahead and revise this 1.5 document again?
Well, I think we can anticipate, I think we talked about this, I think a little bit at an earlier meeting. At a very high level, the principles of massing and compatibility, we will be writing in the guidelines, particularly thinking about downtown, regardless of how many floors or what the height might be, so that the guidelines will already be able to address variation in mass and scale and compatibility of scale at the street level, regardless of where the housing component goes. And there will be, at a high level, some cross-referencing to those anticipated documents or policies. So that already, we'll try to do our best to write it such that if updates are needed, they'll be minimal. And it will be pretty easy to go in then and add any other specific references or an additional illustration, for example, that might be needed. So we will write it at this stage of the game, anticipating that that's going to be following shortly after.
And Nori, just to follow up real quick on that exact point, it was similar to what I was going to ask. You had mentioned at the last meeting that you felt there was a need for a bulk plane illustration of some type, that you had been working on residential and you'd been working on, I think you said I don't know if you said you had already started it, but that's the type of diagram you're talking about, it sounds like. Is that right?
Yes, those diagrams will be in there, working with the current height limits. Yes.
Should we allocate a special, I don't know, place on a future agenda so that the public can weigh in on their thoughts on, the downtown shape, the shape of the downtown for that?
I think they certainly could. We, what we're relying on is the responses to the models that were presented in the first workshop, which showed variation in massing, and we got some pretty clear guidance in terms of what people thought was appropriate. And upper floors, a massing showing to the maximum height at the moment was included, and whether or not, again, that's 2 or 3 floors, that massing model is the same. Okay. So we can review that material, because we're certainly planning on using those graphics, the ones that scored well, if you will, that had good public support. So we can, when we get to that point, we can have a special session with you to look at that particular section of the guidelines, both the text and the suggested graphics. And if there's a need for a supplemental graphic, we can generate that as well.
Okay, perfect. And then how about on this side? Oh, Melanie, do you have any questions? I'll go in order. Really. This side? Questions for Nori? Okay. We're trying to keep you on schedule, Nori.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, and that reminds me, the schedule that we got yesterday about your general work, it was sort of an update to the council, and they forwarded it to us. It sounds like there may be some slippage, and I wondered if, and I just want to clarify this for the whole public, that without the landscape ordinance addition, we were already like 3 months behind, it sounds like, because last time we spoke, we were at March, and now we're at June with no changes. Is that your understanding also? And maybe you could speak to that real quick. What happened?
Yeah, for a variety. Sorry.
Sorry, I know it's like,
For a variety of reasons, including the fact that I've been out of commission for the past 2 weeks, we did slow down, and part of it was, adding in the analysis of online workshop materials and the time that it's taken us to learn from that, all of which has been very beneficial, of course. But for a variety of reasons, we are running slower, and unfortunately, then hitting the holiday season, that even slows down the process as well. But I think now we're going to be getting those drafts by the end of the year here, and we should be able to stay on this schedule as it's been published.
okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly, that it was truly without any changes that the council made last night, and we'll let you go. We'll have to figure out how to incorporate all that, obviously, in the schedule.
Okay.
Staff will do that.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nori. Good to see you.
Lori.
Okay, so that was sort of a deviation from the schedule, but obviously really important. But I think we should take a quick look at the schedule and just see how we want to proceed now. I'm not so sure that we want, it's up to the group, but do we want to immediately now go into the outline, or do we want to, for example, even consider the CPA presentation or go back to this minutes discussion? Does everyone have an instinct about that? I mean, one of the thoughts I had is that if things come up from their presentation that might influence our discussion, we might want to flip it, but I'm just looking for. Go to the presentation?
I agree.
Is that
Yeah.
without objections from the group? Yeah? You're okay with that, Don? Okay. Is that okay with the CPA? Putting you on the spot? Okay. All right. Come on up.
All right. Okay, so this way is forward, I assume? All right. Thank you for hearing us and giving us the ability to present to you. We appreciate that tremendously. Your handouts, I'll just go over a little bit. We'll also provide these via email to Nori, so he'll have them. Initially, of course, what you have is the presentation itself as a handout, so you don't have to worry about anything that you see on the screen there. You have a copy. Also, because we're limited in time, and we've been trying to keep it down to 10-minute presentation, however, we haven't succeeded yet, but we're trying. This piece of paper is really important because in going through the strategy paper and the
A
design.
little more light, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Carol. I can't
That's
see what
okay.
you're referring to because the light, yeah, that's great.
Okay. In going through the strategy paper and the design guidelines, we made comments about what we saw, kind of the main points. And so we have a thumbs up for those things we delightedly agree with, and some other comments that maybe clarifications, different things we wanted to consider, more detail, et cetera, better definitions, et cetera, and some other factors. So that's what this piece of paper is. It's an extension of our presentation because we didn't have time to really go through it, but it is important. And then we just threw in acceptable roof types. Janice got this on the internet, and we thought maybe it would help you in the process looking at different roof types, and tops, just to, give you more discriminating ideas about that. So that's your handout. So let me move on to this slide. What I really want to stress in this slide is that, as you know, we have close to 900 people who have signed a petition saying we want to keep Carmel traditional. This includes both residents and visitors to Carmel. And we also have a steering committee of about 11 people, and it represents also people, leaders from the CRA and leaders from Carmel Cares, who have given us their input on a regular basis, and this presentation and handouts are based on all of their input as well. And what I'd like to say is we don't see it as really personal preference in terms of house styles and designs as much as what is Carmel and what is best for Carmel and what keeps Carmel viable, what keeps people coming to Carmel and spending money in Carmel, and what keeps our residents enjoying Carmel and attracted to Carmel. So that's where we are, and we try and get our egos out of all of that and look at what the big goal, what is best for Carmel. We know that it is unique and that it is a draw and that it is special, and we know that our visitors in particular come and say, we really are upset with what's happening in the last few years with what we see in the housing styles, and we thought Carmel was different. We thought they could fight this and have for several decades until maybe recently. Another point that came up as we were reading through is the terms neighborhood and village, and we like to pair neighborhood and village for the very reason that we want to see Carmel as a unit in a sense, or as a way of being, a kind of character, old world charm, whatever you want to call it, that pervades all of Carmel, not just one neighborhood versus another neighborhood. Yes, there are neighborhood differences, we realize, but those are subtle differences generally. So we like to think of neighborhood and village as kind of a unit. Next, I'm going to ask Janice to come up and give her talk about the rest of a few slides anyway. There we go.
Here, is it this one?
It's that one.
Good morning, I'm Janice Bradner. I'm a 23-year resident of Carmel. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things, some of the tenets within the design guidelines. Thank you, Brandon. The design guidelines emphasize diversity in architecture, and we really need to recognize that within the traditional style, there's actually a lot of diversity. And when we see that in our current environment, we have a blend of Tudor, Craftsman, Spanish, and other traditional styles. And we all agree that the design should not be cookie cutter, and that each homeowner should be given the opportunity to explore options. But those options should be within the confines of the desired architectural styles. I think most of us agree that modern styles, in the right setting, are beautiful. But the majority of us feel that Carmel is not that setting. Boxy industrial architecture plopped into the middle of a quaint traditional neighborhood is in conflict with the desire to have homes blend in with the urban forest. The design guidelines use the term simple lines as a desirable architectural attribute, but the most intriguing houses in Carmel are not the result of simple lines. The tuck box or Hansel and Gretel are examples of how the flowing lines create visual interest that wouldn't exist in a boxy type of structure. The design guidelines discourage building fairy tale cottages, but those are the structures that the visitors come to see when they come to Carmel. The design guidelines also discourage imitating styles, but aren't most architectural designs for homes, even modern homes, inspired by previous similar styles? This example that you're seeing shows a home that was inspired by a Frank Lloyd Wright design. If there wasn't imitation in design, how would you ever be able to categorize a house as modern or traditional, Tudor or Craftsman? You can pick a traditional style home that might imitate aspects of other similar homes within that genre, but still provide unique touches that differentiate it from other homes in that genre. Neil?
Thank you. And modern and traditional architecture, our favorite subject, isn't it? Modern architecture, I recommend that you might want to get on the internet, check a little bit, go to YouTube and why people hate modern architecture. The DeGuerin study, 75% of people said they did not like modern architecture, preferred traditional. A survey was done for the federal buildings. 72% of people said they did not want to see modern architecture in federal buildings. There is a popular dislike of modern architecture. I just wanted to make us aware of that. This portion here is, I remember Nuri talking about delineating the aspects of the various different styles. We're starting to do that here. This is a work in progress. And see here, now this is done in encouraged and discouraged. Encouraged, wooden, stone, or authentic appearing roofing materials, wood or authentic appearing window frames, sills, and molding. Discouraged, stressed functionality over form is encouraged. You know, there's that form follows function debate in architecture. Modern goes to, oh, thank you, Brandon. Pure form says we're not going to do anything but exactly what is needed for the function of that element. That's not so human. Human scale is it does things. So the stairway on the right is a much more human scale friendly thing, inviting. The stairway on the left is pure form and has no feeling and emotion in it. That is discouraged, in our opinion. Encouraged would be create interest and continual delight in design, detail and craftsmanship. Corners exhibit bevels, bullnoses, cornices, and moldings. Discouraged, simple exteriors with large undivided glass panes.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for the help with the...
Hold on, we're losing, oh, there we go.
Yeah, I have problems with equipment. Simple exterior, discouraged are simple exteriors with large undivided glass panes, box-like appearance, or simple rectangular structures and forms. Encouraged, Carmel stone and local granite, arched doors and windows. Discouraged, exposed structure or industrial elements, where you see this.
Click.
Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
What we're all seeing.
I got eye problems, sorry. Discouraged, well, there we go. Encouraged, wooden and or hand-carved doors. Encouraged, traditional lighting in keeping with architecture, old world lighting fixtures, amber lighting, and downward soft lighting. No motion detectors directed to the right of way. You know, when you walk down the street at night in Carmel and boom, you're getting hit with lights, if we could make sure that they don't reach out into the walkway. And the reason for amber lighting is that old idea of, remember when we had candles and kerosene lighting, and it is warm, it is red, it is golden, it's comfortable, it wraps around you. And I'm not going to go through the rest of these in the interest of time, but they are here to follow. So horizontal siding, natural versus unfinished materials, discouraged. Well, you can read all of this as we go. And let me get to the next person. Trendy designs using materials to justify modern, what I call hybrid modern. We see this in Carmel. Oh, they don't like modern? Let's put some wood on it and let's put some trees out in front of it, and then they'll like it. And let me get to the next person. There we go.
Hey, I happen to be the next person because Nancy Toomey is not here yet. She was expecting that we would be presenting later this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's okay. So I'm just going to follow these slides. So we're going to show you a house that was approved and built that disregards 22 existing design guidelines, and it was 2021. And so this is one justification of why we need a design review board. So it happens to be on Camino Real in Carmel-by-the-Sea. So once again, we can go through 22 different this is the neighborhood here around it, 22 different design guidelines that were ignored, broken, whatever you want to call it, to okay this house. And here they all are. We may make it in 10 minutes here.
You know, you could slow down a little bit, Carol. I am almost reading everything, but
Okay.
I'm not that fast.
All right. And you do have it with you there, so you can
Yeah.
read it later if you
Yeah.
want. But we just went through each of the design guidelines and highlighted those things that were violated by approving this building. Now, this is a picture that takes a little more explanation. I thought it was some sort of heat pump or something, but it's actually a view of the house and the landscaping on the lot from above. And once again, the landscaping is not what we are all recommending in terms of landscaping. Please note there are many more houses just like this one that have been approved, recently approved, that do not follow the existing design guidelines. And here are some of them. But it goes on and on and on. Let's not forget the unanimously approved commercial project that brought many of us here to begin with. This is what started the Carmel Preservation Association, was realizing that the Del Dono project was approved unanimously by our Planning Commission. So we knew that the people had to speak up. As a matter of fact, people were speaking up a lot, and we realized that we needed representation. The residents, and in particular, needed representation. So concluding recommendations are that we reinstate the Design Review Board in some form or other, that we rework the design guidelines to require traditional designs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you, for that presentation. I'm very grateful that you took the time to organize this so clearly and to present such, good illustrations and everything. And I just want to ask my colleagues here if they have any questions of the group before we move on. Yes, Melanie?
I don't have any questions. I think it's,
Are you on the mic?
yeah, I am, I think.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just not on top of it. Yeah, I'm on. I want to thank you all very much for your presentation and all this hard work. It's very valuable, very, very valuable to us to have your comments, and especially your overhead presentation and giving us a copy of that, to take with us.
Thank you, Melanie and Victoria. We also wanted to say if you want any of the pictures to present, we have those that we can send you, and you can utilize those, or any other help that we can provide you. We are here.
Thank you so much. Okay, so, yes, come on up. Yeah, comment, any other comment or questions from the public. Come on up.
As an aside, I hope that we'll take a little quiet time sometime today to remember what the date is and the impact on our country on December 7th.
Yeah.
It's kind of important to some of the older generation. You're too young. I'm sorry, Don.
Thank you, Ken.
As you have on the wall behind you, back in the 20s, the public got together and they said, we're going to have something that we believe in. Where we want the city to go. And there it is. It's behind you. This sheet is kind of the same thing for the design and the general plan. It should be the prequel. It should be in front of the design study policies, the general plan. So I hope they'll retain that and include it. It has a very succinct explanation of what the public wanted to see in their design of buildings at the time. I'd also like to encourage you, to look carefully at the design review committee, the benefits, and I would suggest that if the hair director of the planning department shakes when he sees another committee being added, I would say combine it with the Historical Preservation Committee and just have one committee and let them do their job. The Design Review Board saves a lot of time of people coming to the Planning Commission with attorneys. You can resolve a lot of problems during that particular time. And finally, anybody recognize this book?
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm going to buy some of these if I can find them and put them in the planning department. You need to leaf through this book because it's filled with pictures of what Carmel wants to see in a village in a forest. And it's right in front of you. You can't miss a thing. Hey, and one more thing. I want to compliment the planning department under the leader of the great Brandon, because what he's doing is he's got so many balls in the air. He's got a new staff. He's got to train. He's got you to babysit and work with. He's got the council, and he's got the public that comes in once in a while and isn't too complimentary. So I want to compliment you what you're doing.
Thank you, Ken. Yes, more comments from the public.
My name is Sherry McCarty, and I live at Dolores and First for 44 years. And I'm here to support Carol and Neil in all of their efforts to bring attention to the fact that Carmel is being lost. I've seen so many changes in the years that I've been here, and I think that Carmel is always promoted in tourist books as Carmel and the fairy tale houses of Carmel. Well, can you imagine if you're looking for a fairy tale house in Carmel and you stumble across these huge architectural masterpieces that are putting in with glass and wood and no flowers, no gates, no little pane windows? So I encourage you, and I don't think there's a moment to lose, to bring it to the attention of the building department and the design review board, hopefully in the future, to promote and support the Carmel-by-the-Sea that we all have grown to know and love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Anyone else interested in commenting on this? Okay, I'm going to look at the screen for a moment. Does anyone joining us in Zoom land have any comments on the presentation that we just received? Okay, I don't see any action. Oh wait, I do see action.
I have one quick one. I'm gonna just post to the chat a blog post I saw on the Carmel presentation website, and maybe Carol and Neil, you could speak to it a little bit. It's a post that says, "Where do you draw the line?" And it actually names the 3 Henry Hill houses on Lopez and talks highly of them and how they were built in the Bay tradition and fit well into the town. And so I'd just like to get your viewpoint on where do you draw the line where some of these modernist homes, it feels like you are supportive of, yet the traditionalist only view that I thought I just heard would seem to ban such homes from Carmel.
Does anyone from the group want to respond to that? We're casual here.
It was a question too.
Could I interrupt for a minute? I think we're getting into dangerous territory here if we start letting the audience debate each other.
Oh, okay. I thought we
I
could.
think there's a forum for if they want to contact each other outside of our meetings.
I'd be interested in that answer, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of that blog post, but I do think it's an important question. I don't know if.
I would like a response.
Okay, should we take a quick vote? Who wants to hear? I'm serious. I don't want to be the person to decide if we want to have the group respond. So we've got Doug.
It's not really a debate I'm asking for. I just was looking for
It's
clarity.
just a question. I know. Melanie, would you like to hear or not hear?
Yeah, that's fine
Here?
with me.
It's you're the tiebreaker. Do you want to hear the response from the group?
Sure.
Yes, okay. Sorry, Doug. Okay, could someone from the group answer Dave's question? Where do you draw the line in modernism?
Could you clarify that a little bit, Dave? I'm sorry, I was talking to somebody at the first part of your question. Clarifying the line between modern and...
Yeah, can you folks hear me?
Diana Moore's head.
Sorry about that. Can you folks hear me?
Yes, Dave, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
So, no, I just posted a blog post, a link to a blog post that's on your website where it says something about charm, where do you draw the line? And in that,
Diana.
I apologize, someone keeps calling me while I'm speaking.
It's okay.
So in that blog post, it actually talks about the 3 Henry Hill houses on Lopez Avenue and how they're built in the Bay tradition from here and how they fit into Carmel charm, even though they're not traditional. But the presentation I just heard sounded like it's traditional, non-traditional, boom. And so I just want to understand some clarity about, is it really traditional only? Or based on that blog post and other things I've heard, is some modernism that you feel fits within the town?
No, I think the Carmel Preservation Association has made clear that we are for no modern style architecture. I don't think that we've changed that position. The reason is when you let some in and everybody wants modern. So if there is a tiny little crack in the guidelines that says you can do modern, everybody's going to use that crack because that's what wealthy people of status want when they design a home. I know, I work for some of them. And so if we leave any gap at all, that gap will be exploited to the maximum, which is why and we thought about this a lot. We did not come down with this kind of a firmness about it until we realized without it, it would not work.
Okay, I think we have the answer. Thank you. I agree with Doug. Let's not get too in the weeds. Does that answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, I'm still confused by the blog post, but which didn't say that.
Right. I think we may have to hold different concepts in our minds at the same time.
That's fine. So I've sent it to the chat. Maybe everyone could take a read when they have a chance.
Thank you for your participation, Dave. Anyone else have any comments before we close this item? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I still don't see any comments. Let's now move on to not dealer's choice. Choice of the, I don't want to choose. We have 2 other items. Well, we have 3 other items. We have the future agenda items. We can go back now to the outline, or we can talk, I think it's a briefer discussion, check in on these minutes, these action items. Let's get the minutes out of the way. Everyone agree with that? I'm looking around. Nobody's objecting. Okay. What do you need? This is just my own.
I know, but can I have a copy of that?
Which?
What you have on top that you've been referring to, this thing here.
Yeah, this is just my own notes for myself.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I can bring you my notes in the future.
Something that I didn't have.
No, that's not a real thing. That's just me. Okay, so we have, I just brought with us, I think it's my understanding we don't actually have other minutes other than these action items that Doug and I have been producing.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we do, Catherine has been diligent about writing them. I have been remiss in cleaning them up and getting them in a form that was publishable.
Okay.
I've got now three meetings worth of minutes stacked up. So our next meeting, I will be bringing 4 sets for this group. I know, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
No worries.
It's totally
no worries.
on me, not on anybody else.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure, it occurred to me as we keep putting this minute approval item on but we really haven't had minutes, and I just want to make sure that people understand that Doug and I are not trying to take complete minutes of the meeting. We are just trying to keep track of our action items. But because we do have these action items, I thought it would be just a quick, use that spot in the agenda to see how we're doing on the action items, since, again, these are not minutes. So, for example, we did go to council. This was something we assigned ourselves last meeting, and that we can sort of check off from the 18 November, if you look at
Where are you exactly?
Sorry,
on this?
these 2.
Yes, I have them, but
So if you
the
look at
first one says committee business, or which
committee
heading
business.
are you?
Committee business, so chair, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like the 5th one down. Chair to work with staff on an agenda item for the December council meeting. So if you guys would just take a quick look, and, chair, this was me, to produce a doodle poll for more advanced schedule. That did not work out. some predicted that that might not work out, and they were right. I'm happy to not, this is item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the bullet points. So unless, I'd like the folks to weigh in, do they want us to persist in trying to schedule through doodle polls, or should we just, I'm happy to just go off Mary Ann's schedule. But
I don't know if I'm dense or something, but
Yeah.
when I go to 6, it
Yeah.
says sequence in which to address each affected
Oh, you're on
document.
the action items from the prior meeting.
So where?
What meeting are we?
It's go to 18 November 2022.
Okay,
So we're going
gotcha.
backwards in
Gotcha.
order.
Yeah, because I think, Madam Chair, I think you guys
I
actually
don't know
already
where they are.
adopted or accepted those ones from the 3rd.
Yes, this is not, again, these are not truly minutes. These are things we assigned ourselves. I want to make sure that we're keeping up with what we want to do and our priorities remain the same. This is so the doodle poll thing, I just want to check in with folks. Do they want us to pursue the doodle poll approach? I assume not.
That's
That was
fine
kind of
with me.
difficult. I never heard from Don on the doodle poll.
I think you did, but no, I find it very confusing.
Can you?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, perhaps you and I can just work together and do the old analog style of
Yeah.
reaching out to folks and finding the best date.
I think that's possible, and I
Okay.
think, Mary Ann, you really need to drive the schedule if, because we know that your time slots are very specific. So
If I
that's-
have a long enough, if I have a couple months heads up, then I can actually organize my schedule around it.
When we go to the future agenda items, let's talk about schedule, if that's okay with everyone. We've talked again, checked in with Nori Winter about the bulk plane studies. He's affirmed that now. We got the outlines. There's a number of things that are moving forward as we had requested. The critical path diagram, I'm not sure, Brandon, if, there was a new schedule that we got. I don't know if that helps produce that, or...
Well, I would offer that one of the reasons for the critical path diagram, if I recall that you asked for, Madam Chair, was if the steering committee was going to explore some of those additional documents, and I think we heard last night from City Council, that's not something they're interested in this committee doing at this point. So I think the schedule is adopted by the professional services agreement, so that what I put together are sort of the milestones for the project.
And what about the landscape ordinance and how that fits in?
Yeah, so we're going to, if you recall, staff will be going back to City Council. They said February. I'm going to try to get it there earlier. I'm going to try to go in January if we can move quickly on this, because I think it is really important to get started on that. But that will be, once we have approval from City Council on a contract, then we can actually start getting the schedule. But my rough estimate is it's going to be in that January, February, March timeline that we're working on it. That's what I presented last night.
Melanie, are you catching this? Because I know you weren't able to attend. So Brandon's explaining the way that the landscape ordinance process is going to fit in. But we'll catch you up later if that's probably not enough to
Yeah.
fully grasp.
I can meet with you afterwards, Melanie.
Okay.
And give you a heads up.
Anyone else see anything that we feel like we had thought was urgent, haven't gotten to, want to reassert? And we can also cover that in future items. But I just wanted you all to look at this. I feel strange about approving it in a way, since it's really not minutes, but we can.
Well, I think either eliminate the comment that they're minutes.
Melanie, can you make sure to speak into your microphone so
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
the Zoom people can hear you?
Yeah, I think that it can be resolved by just not saying that they're necessarily minutes.
Yeah,
But-
that doesn't say they're minutes, but
Yeah, oh,
for inclusion, we've been
No,
waiting
yeah,
for the
yeah, but
minutes,
it-
yeah.
okay.
So,
It
it'll
was
be
just on the
included.
agenda. Yeah, if we could get these minutes,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I agree. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. No thank you is necessary because I've let you guys down. I should have had those for this meeting, but that's on me.
I do think it would be helpful going through this document. I'm sorry, you started on page 2, right? Or I
Oh,
had the pages
sorry.
reversed or
Yeah,
something.
just the date,
so,
yeah. Just these
if
are the only
we could start
two.
with committee business and then just go through this quickly, I think that would be very
You want to do
helpful.
that? Okay. So, we started, where we're going back in time. We've kind of gone through now the the first group of committee business. The only thing we haven't touched on is direction of staff to provide remaining city officers related to a future landscape ordinance, including a species. So that, I assume, might be forthcoming now, that they've approved that, that action at the
What was
council
item?
level.
Could you read it again? I'm not looking at it.
Sorry, oh, I'm sorry.
So I don't know if I got a copy.
Did
of
you not
what
get a
you handed
copy
out
of
to
that?
everybody.
Maybe you guys can share? Okay, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Too many pieces of paper. So it says, direction to staff to provide any remaining city documents related to a future landscape ordinance, including any plant species information. So just
Yeah, so when
anything related.
Exactly. So when I'm assuming that this committee, and when we talk about future agenda items, one of our very next meetings, hopefully, will be focusing on landscaping. And so those documents would be germane to that meeting, and they would go out ahead of that meeting, like we did with the outline, giving you time to go through those ahead of the meeting.
So that one we hadn't touched on. The last one, we again just on this committee business that says acceptance of winter consulting offer to provide bulk plan studies as pertains to maximum downtown envelope for housing. It was reiterated again by Nori that he's interested in doing that. I would just add that I think the public should weigh in on this. I felt like what I heard at the council meeting last night was people really, and even today, piping up about this. The word, I think Councilmember Ferlito is correct. It is a source of anxiety in the public to imagine this influx. And so I would like the public to have an opportunity to explain for everybody's benefit what it is that they treasure about the current streetscape and what they want to preserve about the current streetscape. I think that when we had, I know Nori was referring to this one exercise about downtown buildings that was done, but I don't believe that folks were putting two and two together. I wasn't. I will speak for myself that that was a housing exercise, or that could apply to this influx of housing. So, and I'm not sure if anyone even remembers what I'm talking about or what Nori was referring to, but I think I have in my mind an illustration of one exercise during all those. So I just want to make sure there's clarity on that people understand we're talking about trying to accommodate the arena numbers. So that's a suggestion that's just, since it's on the list here, that I'm going to bring forward, if it's well, maybe we'll just cover it now for a future agenda item. Is everyone okay with that? Looking around, I see some nods, yeah? Okay, so even though that's item 7 today, I'm going to.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I believe Nori actually said that. He said once we develop that part, we're working on the timeline on that professional services agreement now, as council gave us direction last night. When we get to that part of the guidelines and the zoning code being written, it will come. We're going to plan on presenting it to the committee and the public.
Okay. So let's talk about timing for that at some point, Brandon. You'll just let me know. It has to do again with this sort of. I mean, maybe it's not the critical path, but some kind of sense of what happens when. Mm-hmm. At a slightly, not a macro level, but it's not a micro level, but somewhere in between. Upcoming agenda items, workshop on the landscape ordinance. I think we now have a different structure for that because the council has decided exactly the timing of how that's going to work, and then we'll plug in where that's necessary. Again, any thoughts on that? That make sense from those of us who were there? We're going to talk about the outline for item 2, second bullet there. And then we had the CPA presentation to get today. Someone requested, maybe it was us, the retention strategies for existing residential and commercial buildings. I think that's something to get back to. Noting that. Any comments on any of this page besides? Marianne, go ahead.
No, I was trying to figure out where does you and Doug drafted a charter that we as a group couldn't talk about, and it was yesterday not really discussed either. So since this is the only time we can talk about it, would you just tell us what you what you drafted?
I think it was in the council packet.
Yes, it was.
That's the only place it showed up in public.
Yeah.
But I don't. I can pull it up. I didn't bring it with me, but let me see if I can. Or Doug, you don't have it handy, do you? Maybe he does.
Well, I guess while you're pulling that up, maybe if I could offer, just because I'm gonna dare to tip my toe in here a little bit. And you tell me, Madam Chair, if you want me to shut up, but I will, and I will if you do. But I do recall last night there was a little bit of discussion about the charter that was prepared by the chair and the vice chair. At least one, maybe two of the council members said that, because the asks were up on the screen. They were listed 1 through 6, and the first one was a mission statement. And I thought what I heard from the council was that the mission statement is effectively the professional services agreement with Norway, the schedule that we're under. So I took away from that they kind of said, no, thank you. The ask from the council is to create a mission statement for this group. They said, no, thank you. We already have that. It's the project. So
That's like, I mean, I
that's
think
what
that
I
is,
kind of took away from it.
I think that is one valid interpretation
Yeah.
of what happened. I really do. I think it was a confusing meeting, in my opinion. Our topic was not as confusing as the police station topic, but I understood there to be a debate between that viewpoint and others on the council saying that they thought folks were confused that this was a mission statement about the project instead of about the steering committee. And once that comment was made, the discussion sort of evaporated. That was my recollection of what happened. So I'm left not knowing who understands what about that. And there was no action taken. And because there was no action taken, I think just legally, we just have nothing. We have our own putting forward of this statement that we would like to operate under, and we have no action either way from the council. That's, I think, the legal kind of, we just have discussion to talk about and how different people had different thoughts and people tried to clarify, and does that sound right?
Yeah, I thought I heard clear direction, but I would really like to have Dawn and Doug, because you were there, weigh in on that, because since, we can't talk to each other off record, so I would like to know, to put that to rest, basically.
I agree with it. It was very confusing and inclusive.
Wait, there's your mic on?
I think so. Confusing and inconclusive is my estimation of that subject.
Yeah. Doug, how about you?
I think we have cascading levels of guidance here. We have the agreement with Norway, which is the preeminent document. And then we have what we're working on or we think our role is. And the council didn't put their imprimatur on it one way or another. They sort of discussed it, two of them, and then passed it on. So I think we're left with, do we want to be guided by that document? I mean, we haven't adopted it either. At the last meeting, we authorized the chair to prepare certain documents for the council packet, and that was one of them that went forward.
So then my question is, what do you want to do with it?
That's a good question, Marianne. Well, why don't we, it's a very short document. Do you want to read it over, or you want to have Doug read it into the
Well, Madam
mic?
Chair, I'm going to insert myself. I think if you guys are going to debate the merits of an actual mission statement for this group, that probably would need to be an agendized item for anybody that would want to come from the public and participate. Because you're going to be taking action on something, you should have that on your agenda, I would offer.
This does remind me, Brandon, that you and I both have been remiss in remembering to put on the agenda sort of the miscellany category of anything relevant, because, as the public knows, as we all have come to understand, the Brown Act is sometimes not doing the public's business in public is something all of us believe in, but if it prevents us from doing our work, it's quite cumbersome, and it does not serve the public. So we had intended to remember to put a general topic thing, and I'm trying to think in what way does this...
Well, we were supposed to approve minutes which we don't have. So now we are talking about our own notes instead of the minutes.
That's
and
right.
I think as part of that, we should be able to talk about something that we, at the last meeting, asked the chair to do. The chair went ahead and presented it, but now I think we need to bring,
I think you're right,
bring
Marianne.
that to a conclusion.
I think that is the justification that we were going to discuss minutes, which we have in part here. So it would be nice if the public could see what this
Could I
document is.
offer a motion here first?
Yes, go ahead.
What if we approve the action item minutes of November 3rd and November 18th and get them off the table?
Well, I think Marianne had expressed a desire to catch up and see how we're doing on
Right, but I don't think that eliminates
those.
us doing that.
Yeah, we can continue to discuss them after they're approved. I don't know if, are you comfortable with that, Marianne? This is just, he's talking about, but I'm not even sure we need to approve them, actually.
Okay.
This is, I guess, what I'm saying, is that until we have actual minutes, that these are supposed to be included in, they're more of a prop for discussion. So let's make sure the public knows this charter, Melanie.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up.
Okay, good.
This is the only copy we have.
That's the only copy we have. Yep.
We can probably make some quick copies of it.
Yeah, could we? That would be helpful.
Yeah, but also on the screen is super helpful, and then we can at least show everybody what we're talking about, including ourselves. Because the first time the committee here could see it was when the council saw it, which is, again, the Brown Act protocol.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brandon. Yay. Okay. So shall I, I'll just quickly review this. So that it has a few, oops. Let me.
I think it's the duties section, you know.
The
I think
duties
everything
section?
else is
Okay.
pretty clear, right? It's really the duties section where we basically is the operational part of it.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Brandon. Right. So let's focus on that then. So the duty. Where are you going, Brandon? Okay, okay, good. Now it's big. Okay, thank you. So duty number 1, work with the city's consultant in the development, evolution, drafting, review, presentation, and city council adoption of new residential and commercial design guidelines, amendments to the Muni Code, general plan or local coastal plan, and other related documents that may pertain to the guidelines. That's number 1. Number 2, work with the city planning staff. Well,
Can I take it one? Oh,
yeah, let me just make sure everyone sees this and hears it out in the community. Work with the city planning staff in the writing, editing, review, and presentation of the design guidelines. 3, initiate the study and research, drafting, and editing, presentation, and adoption by the City Council of plans, programs, policies, regulations, and ordinance arising from the committee's work effort on the design guidelines. These efforts may include, but are not limited to, work on a landscape ordinance related to community design of private and public properties, and the design implications of development related to housing efforts, and similar work as it arises. Those are the 3. It's again, a very general document. This is the most specific part about it, I suppose. Go ahead, Marianne, tell us your comments on whichever part you'd like.
I'm interested to know how staff envisions that the flow of information will work. So I think there were a couple instances where we had small items that are of big interest to us. For example, that bulk plane study that I heard for the first time in the public presentation workshop, where it would have been great to have a discussion ahead of time. And so that's really my main interest, is the flow of information, and when would we, because also I think scheduling our meetings should be scheduled so that we get information ahead of time, in time, so we can all have time to get prepared, and then the committee meetings, I think, are the most productive.
So I can answer that. I think we've kind of been dancing around today the format for how that might work. Like, take the landscaping, for example, we just talked about. We know that landscaping is going to be an item that's important to everyone and is important, and we're going to be working, the city's going to be working to select a contractor, a landscape architect to work with us in drafting those guidelines. And so we're going to have a steering committee meeting at some point in the next couple of months to talk about landscaping. And so I think what we should do is these items where staff and Nori need feedback from the steering committee on items to keep our timeline moving under that professional services agreement, we're going to send that information to you ahead of time. Like you just said, like the landscaping information will all come ahead of time, or bulk plane. One of the things when we start actually writing the bulk plane section, we'll come in and have a conversation with the steering committee and the public about what that looks like. So that's kind of how I see that working. And I think that would be the best benefit, because then we can get the feedback from this committee as we're working, staff and Nori drafting these sections of the guidelines to keep on that schedule. But getting the feedback early on these high level topics. And so one of the things that would be a benefit to staff out of this committee is identifying those things that the committee feels strongly about wanting to weigh in on. I mean, I've been taking some notes today. Bulk plane's a big one, landscaping. So if there's other key elements that the committee wants to make sure that they're early input on as sort of like milestone items, then we can make sure we bring that information ahead of time as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else have comments on this one-page charter, I guess, that they didn't get to see in advance?
Seems very clear to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Looks good.
Thank you both for doing it.
Mostly Doug. Thank you, Doug. Okay, so then we do have a question before us. Since we don't feel that we have clarity, at least the majority of the committee doesn't feel they have clarity. Melanie wasn't there.
Yeah.
Marianne, it seems that you feel as though you saw, similar to Brandon, a kind of, I don't know, direction that this isn't relevant or something, or that we should refer to the document that's the contract for the consultant to determine our role. And then we have the majority over here saying, no, it seemed really just confusing, and there was some discussion on that side and there was some discussion on the other side, and then they dropped it. Which means, to me, my view is that we should simply assume that this, unless Melanie says it looks good, I don't know how you feel, Mary Ann, Dawn, I think said it looked good, so unless there are major objections, I think we should think that this at least represents our understanding of our role. Whether we get to play that role or not is maybe not up to us in the end. But I think this language is not that confining. It's simply, we're going to be working on these things and trying to help and see where it goes. But I would recommend that we adopt it if there are no objections, or we take a vote if there is a difference of opinion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have no objection to the language, but I think it's a thin line we're drawing between our minutes and this document and being able to act on them today. I think there's a bold chain of demarcation in the Brown Act.
Okay.
Because this isn't on our agenda.
Okay.
I don't think there's any harm in postponing it to our next meeting.
Okay.
To put it on so the public has a chance to review it and comment in better step.
Thank you for the city management hat. I appreciate it. I'm not a parliamentarian, so I need reminders, and I really appreciate it. Is that okay with folks to
Sure.
put it onto the next agenda?
Can I just?
Yes,
can I
Melanie,
just make
into the
one
mic,
comment?
yes.
Can I just make one comment? Doug, is this okay? If I just make a comment in general about the drift of this, because it really does impact what we're going to be doing the rest of the day, as well as what we're going to do next week. So do you think I can just make a comment about that? Or not?
I mean, it could, but we've been operating for 8 months without it.
Yeah.
So 1 more month, reviewing the outline.
Yeah, well, no, that's not a problem for me, but I just want to, thank you all for doing this, and just to say, as a matter of our work for the next month or certain weeks or month, that I don't know what we're supposed to be doing if we don't do what's in this duties list.
Well,
And, I'm not going to it just makes it extremely difficult for us if we don't have a clear understanding about what
Melanie,
our
can you
role
speak
is.
into your microphone? Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
it makes it very difficult, excuse me, for us if we don't have a clear understanding of what we're supposed to be doing. Like, if we're not going to meet again for a month, or maybe next week, or whatever, what I'm going to be doing, how much time I'm going to devote, if I don't think that what's in this duties definition is what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, it's getting to be rather frustrating.
I hear your frustration. I know it's frustrating. And it's been a struggle, and it's been, we hoped this would resolve it. We hoped that the council would be clear in their direction. The majority of us think they were not. And I believe that's just where we are. I don't know how else to do it but to gear up and present it to council and see what they do. That we cannot discuss it with the group, as a group with them outside of the council meeting. And the idea, we could do it again in January at their January meeting, but I mean, it seems like.
Well, then we can't keep to a schedule.
Right.
You know,
I know.
I mean, this gets to be month after month, a bit much.
Marianne?
It may help to put it forward just again in a very clear manner what you intended to do, rather than just including like a letter to the council or something like that, rather than just putting this on the agenda as a document to adopt, because maybe, at least from what I heard Karen say, I don't know that she was very clear on what they were supposed to do with the document or why they were supposed to adopt it. So I think if it was accompanied by a clear statement what your goals are for this document, how it would change our operation compared to how we are operating now, that may be helpful.
I think it'd have to go on their agenda as a
Yeah.
meeting item. Doug?
And can I ask Brandon a question?
Yes, please.
The ad hoc committee has a mission statement.
That's correct.
What's the origin of that?
The ad hoc committee you mean the housing ad hoc committee?
Mhm.
Yeah. They drafted that mission statement in coordination with staff and then brought it forward at their next meeting, and then we shared it with city council at a meeting.
So they just shared it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's what we did.
And is there a reason that wasn't done with this committee?
There's no reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like the protocol they followed. Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I think Mary Ann's correct. I think that we should draft a letter, and I think we should tell them that be very candid. Just say there's confusion about what the council's direction is, and that we find it extremely difficult to work as a group, not knowing that what we have here is exactly what they envision us to do. And then, ask them to resolve it.
Would they then write their own version? Is that what we're asking them to do?
I don't know. We just ask them to, ask them if they, what their point of view was at the council meeting. Just say, we just don't clearly understand where the council is coming from. And maybe it's just a matter of clarification and them understanding that we see this as a problem to our, related to our proper functioning and the time schedule that Nori's on and we're supposed to be abiding by too. I don't know. I'm just, I just throw up my hands.
Throw up your hands. Okay, Marianne, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I mean, they appointed us, so I'm sure they had some idea of what we were supposed to do. So that's all. That's just a clarification.
I have a contrarian point of view.
What did you say?
We sent this to the council and they didn't act on it.
Yeah.
So I think we ought to just continue. This is our guiding principle. We'll operate under it. The other part of it is you may not want to ask. You may not like the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the answer is an answer you don't want, then we will have another existential question in front of us, which is whether we want to continue on as a committee. If this is a charter that we like, and that seems to represent our understand what we should be doing as 5 human beings who signed on to this task under a certain understanding, if this is what we like, and we're willing to operate under these principles, as it sounds like we would be, now that you've gotten a chance to see them and have them on the screen, then I think if we think this is an agreement that we have, then we can continue on as a committee under this. If, and I'm not saying this would happen, but if we got a different set of principles from the council, if we asked them to draft something up, since they did not do it at the beginning, and they, unlike the ad hoc committee, which seems to have done it for themselves and shared it, and then that was it, they moved on. If we get a defined charter that's different, we will then have to, and that's fine with me, meet and decide whether that charter is a charter we want to work under. Does that sound right to everybody?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, we didn't have any chance to discuss it, and I frankly believe it says initiate the study and research, drafting and editing, but first of all, we didn't initiate, and if we